With this video, I want to start a new series on this channel, which will detail all the steps that we go through as a band to produce a new song. And this first video will be specifically about the start of the production, in which we record a song in our rehearsal room. I get it into Cubase and prepare it so that everybody else in the band can add their part. So let's go! So as I explained in the intro, this series will be about how we produce a new song as a band, and specifically the activities that I do here in the studio to make that production. This whole series could very well take half a year and contain many steps. And you're actually following along because the song isn't finished. I'm just recording this and I've just done the first step, which is making a Cubase project for the other guys that they can use to contribute their parts. Because a couple of people of the band actually have recording setups at home as well, so they can contribute their part at home. Typical activities that take place over here are vocal recording, acoustic guitar recording, electric guitar recording, and mixing, and finally sending off for mastering. So all those steps I will go into further detail during the course of this series. So as a band we've recorded in many ways. We've done the full hire a studio, get some recording engineers, get a mixing engineer, get a mastering engineer, and finally end up with a production. But because this channel is about a home recording studio, I will show the process, how it's done when we're really recording everything ourselves and also mixing everything ourselves, and just the mastering step we tend to farm out just as an extra additional quality ear in the final step. So let's go to the PC. So when we're ready as a band to start another production, the first thing that we do is that we record a reference track during rehearsal. This is basically the song played in full with everybody playing their parts, the way we've rehearsed them, like sometimes quite long already, because usually it takes us quite a while to fully flesh out a song and to come up with parts that everybody is satisfied with and that sound well together. But when we're there, then we will make a reference recording, so that we can use it as a reference during the real production. Well, there's been various ways that I've made reference recordings, but it all kind of started with this many years ago. This is the original Zoom H2. At the time I thought this made really fantastic recordings. I've made acoustic recordings with this and it really sounds great. Obviously in a rehearsal room where there's loud drums, loud instruments, yeah, there are always compromises, but still it did quite well. If you look at screen, this is probably the current equivalent, the Zoom H2N. Lots more possibilities, more pickup patterns. Probably the sound is even better than with the original H2. This is one option. However, at a certain point I just started using my iPhone for the reference tracks. And with a little addition, this got me actually pretty much the same quality. And the addition is a separate mic, which plugs into the lightning connector of an iPhone. It's by Shure. It's the MV88. It comes with a nice little pouch that you can, well, it's very easy to bring this one to rehearsal. They also have a newer version of this, which is the MV88 Pro Plus, I think it's called. However, that's mostly for videographers and it doesn't plug into the lightning connector. But I do understand that the sound is slightly improved. However, the original MV88 is also still for sale. The microphone with the girl here attached to the on top of the iPhone is actually the MV88 Plus. But that's a more extensive kit, and the MV88 plugs into the side of the iPhone, as you can see here, and it comes with this little carrying case. And I really like the sound quality of this, and this is actually also the microphone that I used for the reference track that you're going to hear now. So now I have a recording made at a rehearsal. It was made with the Shure Motive app, which is a separate application that you can use with the microphone, and it allows you to record in 24 bits 48 kilohertz, so a nice bitrate and quality. The first thing I do after I've gotten the audio off of the phone is do a quick little mastering job to make sure that the level is raised, and I try to correct any weak points in the recording. Since about a year I've been using a TC Electronic Finalizer for this. It can also be done in Cubase, but this application which I have running on my PC is it just gives a little bit of a quicker workflow, and it provides some nice metering options, so you can compare your track and see exactly what you're doing. So if you look at the screen, you see the application, TC Electronic Finalizer, and what you're seeing here in the middle is the processing that I'm doing on the signal. So the first thing I'm doing is I have adjusted the stereo image a bit. I made a little bit more stereo by increasing the side channel compared to the mid channel, and I've panned it a little bit to the left. Apparently there was a little bit of unbalance due to the recording that I did in the rehearsal room, so I panned it a little bit to the left. Then I'm increasing some lows, I'm increasing some highs, and I'm increasing even higher highs. And at the end, just before the limiter, I have a multiband compressor set up. At the very end, there is a limiter to just increase the level a bit. And the nice thing about this limiter is that you can actually set it to the loudness that you want at the end. So this is the integrated loudness that this track will have after going through the processing. I can switch between unmastered and mastered version of the track. So let's quickly listen to the difference. I've been trying to leave, and I am holding on. Yeah, so to me the mastered version sounds a little better. So that's the one I'm going to export from this application and then use in Cubase in my project for the rest of the song production. Okay, so now that I have a somewhat mastered track, I have started up a new Cubase project. It's a very clean Cubase project, so I'm not actually have imported any template, and that's mostly because I want to be able to give this project to band members who will record some of their parts at their house with their Cubase, and they may not have the same plugins or not the same audio interfaces and stuff, so it's a very simple project without anything fancy, so that I can give it to others to use as well. First thing I want to do is I want to import my mastered track. So I'm going to drag and drop the mastered track on the project. It is already in the project folder. Now our drummer has indicated that during the recording of this reference track, his metronome was on tempo 55 for the quarter note. So that's what I've also set over here in Cubase. If I'm going to look at the beginning of this, so I wanted to start exactly on beat 1. Which means I will cut it somewhere here. Maybe even more exact. Great. Move it on the grid. And now I'm going to listen to the tempo. So as you notice, that sounds very much on the click. However, if I go further a bit, even the truth, don't know who you are. You notice that it starts deviating a bit. It may be that the singer hasn't properly heard the ticks of the drummer. I also notice that later on he gets the tempo back on the click. However, what we want is to have this more or less in sync with the click, so that we can record on the click, so we can always refer back to the reference track wherever we are to see so what's supposed to be played over here. So what I want to do first is tempo straighten this reference track, and you do that by going to the project menu and you say tempo detection. Then you get a little tempo detection panel here. You can say analyze, So what it says now is that multiple tempos were detected in the event, and apply the smooth tempo function if the tempo of the material is assumed to be constant. Well, the tempo material is supposed to be constant, and over here you see the tempo track, and you see that over here, yeah, it has somehow detected double time or triple time or whatever, and over here as well. So I'm going to push smooth tempo, and that has pretty much straightened out the tempo in those places. So now I'm going to listen again whether the track is now on the click. It's pretty good over there. Feel in the dark, don't know who you are. And now. So over there you notice that the tempo is still off, and you also see that, well, Cubase has calculated like a little increase in the tempo there, which seems to be a bit exaggerated. So if I zoom in, I can see here what's going on. If I listen again to this section. So this event seems to be a bit early, so I want to move it. Probably over here. However, what you now notice is that even though I move it, it doesn't stay in place. And this is annoying because this is supposed to be how it works, but apparently it doesn't work correctly in Cubase 10. So I'm now going to revert back to Cubase 8.5 to do the tempo straightening for this reference track. So now we're back in Cubase 8.5 with a blast from the past, and we're in exactly the same state as when we just left the Cubase 10.5 Pro. And I've pushed the analyze button, tempo analysis has been done, and Cubase has detected the tempos. And that seems to have worked already much better than in 10.5 actually, because I didn't have to push the smooth tempo button. And also the sections which I wanted to manually correct seem to be pretty much on the beat here. Feel in the dark, don't know who you are, and now. So I don't actually have to do any manual correction for this track in Cubase 8.5, but I'm just going to show that over here it would be possible. For example, if I had to move this beat, then I could just move it to another place, and if I now let it loose, and it just stays there, and Cubase corrects the tempo so everything matches up again. But it's not necessary, so I'm going to undo it. So let's assume that I've now listened through the whole track and then I'm satisfied with what I'm hearing. So I can now go to Audio, Advanced, Set Definition for Tempos, so that it now saves all the tempo changes that it has found. I'm also setting my tracks to a musical time base. If I push OK, I can close the tempo detection panel and go back to my normal selector. And again, if I now play the track, in the dark, don't know who you are, and now. The only thing that is not correct yet now is that Cubase makes sure that the beat stays on the music by varying the beat. If you look below here in the actual tempo that is being used, you can see that Cubase will, every beat will change this tempo. And that's not what I want. I want the tempo to be constant at 55, and I want the reference track to adjust to that tempo. So what I can now do is I can turn off the tempo track, then type in 55 here, and this should also still keep the music in sync now, because it has now stretched the track to fit into the 55 tempo. Feel in the dark, don't know who you are, I'm being afraid, I stare in the dark. So very nicely on the beat, and I can now export this track from this project, and I have a tempo straightened reference track. Okay, back to Cubase 10.5, because obviously that's the version that I want to do the production in. started with an empty project again, and I'm now going to import the tempo straightened track. So I'm going to import it in my project. It's already in the correct location. Let's listen.
Take a life, feel in the dark, don't know.
So it seems to be pretty much on the beat now, which is what I wanted. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to change the time signature of the track, because it's now in 4/4, and which gives a very low tempo. And which is quite annoying if you want to play something to the click. Then such a slow click makes it harder to play in time. So I would really like to have the division that the drummer is actually ticking. So he's going 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So it seems to me that this track could also be seen as playing in 12/8. So I'm going to change the time signature to 12/8. I bring up the tempo track with Control T. And over here you see that I can change the time signature from 4/4 to 12/8. So the track is now in 12/8. The only thing is that the tempo will now be wrong. If I play this now, it doesn't seem to make sense at all. And that's caused by the fact that the 55 number actually says that there are 55 beats per minute, 55 quarter notes per minute, and my quarter note is now something else, because I've changed to 12/8 time, and before I had 4/4 time. So what I need to do is I need to recalculate the tempo, which is actually 55, which I had previously, divided by 2 and multiplied by 3. My new tempo would be 82.5, which I need to set, so let's do that. And let's see how it sounds now. You see it's back in time again, and now the click is much faster, which is what I want, and which makes it easier for people to play in time. Another thing which I usually do is that I don't actually start at the very beginning of the project, but I leave at least 2 measures of count in before anything happens. So I have one empty measure and the one measure of count in, which the drummer also uses for the count in. So now my start of the project is this. What I then tend to do is that I add markers throughout the song, so that I know where the choruses are, where the verses are, where the instrumental sections are, etc, etc. So to do that you can add a marker track. And I tend to want it always at the top, and I want to make sure that even if this lower part here has more tracks and don't fit anymore, the marker track now always stays on top, because I've used the divide track list control over here. Okay, so with Ctrl M you can bring up the marker panel, which allows you to name the markers that you enter. And with these controls over here you can add the markers. So I want to add a marker at the very start, and I want to call it count in. And I should make this a bit bigger so you can see that's on the track as well. Over here I want a marker that says this is the start of the intro, and etc. Okay, so after I've added all the markers, it basically looks like this. And this project would be my final starting point for the production. So when I record something, I add it to this project. If somebody else records something in his home studio, he will also use this project to start off with. The first person I'm going to send it to is probably our drummer, who will be able to add his drum part in this project. But that will be in another episode of this series. If you made it this far in the video, then you should really like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave some comments and suggestions if you have any. Also ring the little bell icon so you get notified when I post another video. See you soon!